Dick Van Dyke reveals the 6 actors he hated the most. For 33 years, I loved a woman another man had broken. Not broken the way you drop a glass and it shatters. Broken the way you bend something so many times it forgets how to stand straight. He took 6 years of her life, every ounce of her faith in love. And when he was done, he walked away like she'd never existed. His name was Marvin, and he taught me the hardest lesson I ever learned, that some men don't just leave, they erase. Dick Van Dyke, 100 years old. I've spent 70 years in this business, smiling for cameras, shaking hands with men who made my skin crawl, staying gracious when every bone in my body wanted to walk away. Because that's what you do in Hollywood, you perform. But there were 6 men I couldn't smile for. 6 men who tested something in me I didn't know could be tested. And one of them? I watched him destroy the woman I loved. Not in a moment, over decades. Every night I held her while she whispered his name in her sleep. Every morning I saw her flinch when voices got too loud. This isn't about feuds. I don't do feuds. This is about the edges of grace, about how far kindness can bend before it breaks. 6 men, 6 lessons. Number 6 taught me that cruelty can wear a comedian's mask. Number 5 taught me that genius without kindness is just poison. Number 4 taught me that ego devours everything, even legacy. Number 3 taught me that suffering doesn't make you deep, it just makes you alone. Number 2 taught me that age doesn't grant wisdom, it amplifies what was always there. And number 1? Number 1 taught me that some wounds never close, that you can love someone completely and still carry the ghost of the man who broke them first. So let me tell you about the 6 actors who showed me the limits of my own grace, starting with the one who made meanness look like art.
She was working with 3 people who had done a lot of comedy.
Number 6, Chevy Chase. Dick, 1975. I'm 50 years old. 3 Emmys on my shelf. Mary Poppins playing in theaters. By all accounts, I've won. I've proven you can be funny without being cruel, that physical comedy doesn't need a victim. And then I turn on the television one Saturday night, expecting to laugh. Instead, I watch the future of comedy, and it terrifies me. His name is Chevy Chase, and he's doing something I've never seen before. He's making people laugh by making other people small. Not himself. That's what Chaplin did, what Keaton did. They were the fool. Chevy made you the fool. And America loved it. You know what's strange? I understood the comedy. The timing was perfect. The delivery, surgical. But watching him, it felt like watching someone discover they could get laughs by kicking a dog, and then discovering they liked it. I called a friend that night, a writer I'd worked with for years. I said something I'd never said before. When did we decide that hurting people was funny? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Dick, you're not wrong. You're just old. As if kindness had an expiration date. As if decency was something you aged out of, like acne or ambition." Here's what I didn't know then. Chevy Chase wasn't the worst. He was just the beginning. The first crack in a dam I'd spent decades building. The dam that said, you can be successful without being cruel. You can be funny without being mean. That dam was about to break. You remember how Charlie Chaplin made you laugh, don't you? It's like watching a film on an old projector in your grandmother's living room. The image jumps a little. There's that clicking sound, but the heart of it? The heart still beats. Chaplin stumbled, but he only ever made himself look foolish. Never you. Chevy flipped that equation. Suddenly, comedy was a blood sport. Years later, I learned something about Chevy that made me not forgive him, but understand him. His father every single day. Told him, if you're not the funniest person in the room, you're worthless. So Chevy made sure no one else could be funny. It wasn't cruelty, it was survival. When you grow up believing love is conditional on performance, you learn to eliminate the competition. I still don't excuse it, but I understand it now. Chevy taught me that cruelty can wear a smile. But if I thought he was poisonous, I hadn't met Paul Lynde yet. #5. Paul Lynde, Dick. 1960, Broadway, the Imperial Theater. I'm 35, and I just landed the role that will change my life. Albert Peterson in Bye Bye Birdie. He drinks. Not socially, not to relax. He drinks the way drowning men gulp air. Desperately, constantly. As if one night, late, after the show, I find Paul sitting alone in the dressing room, still in costume, staring at himself in the mirror. I ask if he's okay. He doesn't look at me. He just says, "You know what's funny, Dick? You can make 1,000,000 people laugh and still go home to silence." I didn't know what to say, so I sat with him. And for a moment, I thought maybe I could help. Maybe I could be the friend he needed. Then he turned to me and said, "Of course you wouldn't understand. You've got the wife, the kids, the perfect little life. Must be nice to be so uncomplicated." Here's what broke my heart. I understood him. I was fighting my own battle with alcohol at the time. What I didn't know then, what I wouldn't learn for 20 years. No wonder he drank. No wonder he was cruel. When the world won't let you be yourself, you start to hate everyone who can. Talent without kindness is like a piano that only plays one note. Brilliant, but cold. Paul could play that note beautifully, but he refused to learn any others, and eventually, no one wanted to listen anymore. Paul taught me that genius without kindness is wasted brilliance. But if I thought Paul was tragic, the next man was something worse, deliberate. #4. Jerry Lewis. Let me tell you about Jerry Lewis. Jerry didn't just think he was the king of physical comedy. He thought he invented it. That Chaplin was a warm-up act, that Keaton was a footnote, that every pratfall, every rubber-faced grimace in cinema history existed only to prepare the world for Jerry Lewis. And then, I showed up. I didn't try to compete with Jerry. I didn't need to. My style was different, smoother, quieter, rooted in dance. But critics started making comparisons. Dick Van Dyke has the elegance Jerry Lewis lacks. Van Dyke is Laurel to Lewis's Harpo. Jerry did not like that. We never worked together, never fought. But those who knew us both will tell you, there was ice. Every call went unanswered. Every mutual friend suddenly had no comment. It was like I'd been erased from his universe. Here's what made it hurt. Stan Laurel was my hero. The man who taught me that physical comedy wasn't about volume, it was about precision, about vulnerability. Stan praised me, publicly, called me the best since Chaplin. When I visited Stan in his later years, he welcomed me like a son. We'd sit for hours just talking about timing, about the craft. Jerry Lewis tried to visit Stan once. Stan reportedly told his caretaker, "Tell him I'm not home." That's the difference between Jerry and me. Stan saw in me what he'd spent his life building, comedy that made you feel less alone. Jerry represented what Stan had always fought against, comedy that made you feel superior. Jerry built himself a room full of mirrors. Every surface reflected only one face, his own. He stood there, alone, admiring himself from every angle, and he called that success. But a room full of mirrors never has real laughter, only echoes. I don't think Jerry hated me. I think he was terrified. Terrified that one day when people said physical comedy, they'd think of Dick Van Dyke instead of Jerry Lewis. And for a man who'd spent his entire life proving he was number one, that felt like death. Jerry taught me that ego devours everything, even legacy. But at least Jerry's ego was loud. The next man's ego was quiet. And somehow, That was worse. The closer wounds. Number 3. Gene Hackman, Dick. 1971, Greenfield, Iowa. We're shooting a dark comedy called Cold Turkey. I play a minister trying to get an entire town to quit smoking. It's satire. It's supposed to be fun. And then there's Gene Hackman. Gene is fresh off the French Connection. He's method, capital M. He doesn't break character between takes. He doesn't socialize. He treats the set like a war zone, and everyone on it like enemy combatants. I try to lighten the mood. I crack jokes between setups. I sing. I make sure the crew knows we're all in this together, that we're making something people will enjoy. Gene looks at me like I'm defiling a church. One day, I remember this so clearly it still makes my chest tight. We're setting up a scene where I trip over a chair. It's physical comedy. It's what I do. Gene is watching me rehearse with this look of contempt, like I'm a child playing dress-up. After the take, I walk over, extend my hand. Gene, I say, can we just talk like human beings? He looks at my hand, doesn't take it, just walks away. I stood there, hand extended, for 5 seconds. 5 seconds that felt like 5 years. The crew stared. I slowly lowered my hand. I've never forgotten what rejection looks like. A hand reaching into nothing. And you know what? For a second I believed him. For a second I thought, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm not serious enough. Maybe joy is shallow. That night, I went back to my hotel, looked in the mirror, and for the first time in my life I asked myself, Dick, are you becoming one of them? Gene taught me something I wish I'd never learned. Some people believe suffering is the only path to truth, that if you're not miserable, you're not serious. You ever see an old oak tree standing alone in a field? They grow tall, grow strong, but when a storm comes, they snap easier than trees that grew together, because they never learned to bend, never learned flexibility. Gene Hackman is a great actor, one of the best, but he's also a cautionary tale. Gene taught me suffering doesn't make you deep, just lonely. But I was about to learn an even harder lesson. What happens when you don't learn that? When you hold on to glory so tight, it strangles you. Number 2. Mickey Rooney. Dick. 2006, Vancouver. Night at the museum. I'm 81 years old, playing a villain, having the time of my life, dancing, joking with Ben Stiller, doing my own stunts because, hell, why not? And then there's Mickey Rooney, 86 years old, also playing a small role, also supposedly a legend. Except Mickey is furious about everything. The cold, the early call times, the size of his trailer, the fact that he's not the star anymore, that the world has moved on, that young people don't remember when he was the biggest box office draw on planet Earth. I watch him berate a production assistant, a kid, maybe 19, because his coffee isn't hot enough. And something inside me just sinks. Because I see exactly what Mickey has become. A man who confused fame with identity, who built his entire sense of self on applause. And now that the applause has faded, there's nothing left but rage. Mickey was 5 years my senior, 86 to my 81. But we were cut from the same cloth. We both knew what it was like to be the golden boy, to be young and celebrated and convinced you'll live forever. The difference is, I learned to let go, to find joy in the work itself, not the recognition, to treat crew members like family, to understand that aging is a privilege, not a punishment. Mickey never learned that. The intervention. One day he's mid-rant about something trivial and I walk over, put my hand on his shoulder. Mickey, I say quietly, that's enough. He spins around, ready to unleash, and I just look at him, not angry, just sad. At some point, I say, you have to decide, Are you going to grow old gracefully, or are you going to grow old loudly? He stares at me, and for just a second I see something flicker in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or regret. Then it's gone. He walks away. We never speak again. Mickey spent his whole life building a castle out of applause, and when the applause stopped, he realized he was living in a castle with no foundation. One gust of wind, and everything collapsed. That night, alone in my hotel room, I did something I hadn't done in years. I cried. Not for Mickey, for myself, because I realized how close I'd come, how easily I could have been him. And there was one thing I hadn't admitted yet. One thing I'd kept hidden for 40 years. It's time I told you the truth. The mirror moment. Before I tell you about the sixth man, the man who broke Michelle, I need to confess something. I am not the hero of this story. I'm not sitting here to say, look at me, I'm better than them. I'm sitting here to say, I almost became one of them. 1972. I'm 47 years old. I'm hiding vodka bottles in my office. I'm lying to my wife about where I've been. I'm waking up in the middle of the night, shaking, wondering if I'll make it through tomorrow without a drink. I was an alcoholic. A functional one, sure. The kind who shows up on time, hits his marks, smiles for the camera. But an alcoholic, nonetheless. The only difference between me and Paul Lynde? I got help. I checked into rehab. I stood in front of a room full of strangers and said, my name is Dick Van Dyke, and I can't do this alone. Paul never did that. Jerry never admitted he needed anyone. Chevy thought the world owed him everything. So when I talk about these men, understand, I'm not judging from some pedestal. I'm judging from the ground, from the same mud they were stuck in. If Stan Laurel hadn't taken me under his wing in 1961, taught me that comedy is about love, not ego, I could have been Jerry Lewis. If I hadn't gotten sober in 1972, I could have been Paul Lynde, dying alone because I drank to escape myself. If I hadn't met Michelle in 1976, I could have been Lee Marvin, a man who didn't know how to love because no one taught him how. So what's the difference between me and them? Not that I'm better, that I'm luckier. Lucky to have the right people at the right time. Lucky to be humble enough to admit I need help. Lucky to be scared enough to change before it was too late. And the sixth man? He taught me the most painful lesson of all, that not everyone gets to be lucky. The wound that never healed. Number 1. Lee Marvin. Dick. 1970. Malibu, California. Michelle Triola has been living with Lee Marvin for 6 years. She's given up her career to support his, cooked his meals, managed his chaos, loved him unconditionally. And one day, Lee Marvin walks into their home and says 5 words. Pack your things. You're leaving. No explanation, no apology, no money, just gone. Michelle's story. Michelle is 46. No career, no savings, no home. Lee moves someone else in that same week. She does what anyone would do. She sues. Not for marriage, they were never married, but for compensation. For 6 years of her life spent building his world while hers crumbled. The trial becomes a circus. Marvin versus Marvin, 1979, and Lee's defense is brutal. His lawyers paint Michelle as opportunistic, calculating, a woman who made her bed and now regrets it. Lee testifies that she knew what she was getting into, that he owes her nothing. He shows no remorse, no recognition of the 6 years she gave him. The judge awards Michelle $104,000 for rehabilitation, a fraction of what she asked for, a humiliation disguised as justice. Lee Marvin walks away richer. Michelle walks away broken. That's where I come in. Dick, 1976. 3 years before the trial ends, I meet Michelle at a party. I see her pain, but I see something else. A woman who refuses to stay broken. I fall for her, not despite her scars, but because of her resilience. Because she survived Lee Marvin and still somehow found the strength to trust again. For 33 years, I love Michelle. I don't marry her, not at first, but I show up every single day, through the trial, through the media mockery, through the whispers that she's a gold digger and I'm a fool. And every single one of those days, I carry the weight of what Lee Marvin did. Because here's the thing about loving someone another man broke. You inherit the damage. You become the archaeologist of their pain. Every night, I held her while she cried in her sleep, whispering Lee's name. Every morning, I watched her flinch when doors slammed, when promises were made. Lee Marvin didn't just leave Michelle. He rewired her. Made her believe that love was conditional. That men who say forever mean until someone better comes along. I spent 3 decades proving him wrong. I never met Lee Marvin, never worked with him, never shook his hand. But I spent 33 years cleaning up his mess. And here's what I learned years later, something that changed everything. Lee Marvin grew up in the Depression, fought in World War II, Saipan, Iwo Jima, saw friends die next to him. And when he came home, no one asked, "Are you okay?" They just said, "Forget it, move on." Maybe Lee didn't leave Michelle because he was cruel. Maybe he left because he didn't know how to love anymore. War took that from him. But you know what? I don't care. Because pain doesn't give you the right to inflict pain. Being broken doesn't give you permission to break others. Lee Marvin might have had reasons, but Michelle didn't deserve the consequences. The last night. 2009. Michelle is 76. She's in hospice. And I'm holding her hand, just like I've held it for 33 years. She looks at me, her voice barely a whisper, and she says, "Thank you for proving good men exist." Those are her last words to me. Lee Marvin broke her, but I gotta put the pieces back together. You know those old Polaroid photographs? When they start to fade, they don't get uglier. They get softer, like time is holding them gently. Our love was like that. It wasn't perfect. It carried the scars of the man before me. But those scars taught me what real love means. Not loving someone who's perfect, but loving someone who's been shattered and choosing to believe again anyway. I don't forgive Lee Marvin, but I thank him, because without him, I'd never have understood. Real love isn't never falling. It's holding hands when you're both still trembling. Closing. The edges of grace. So that's it. 6 men. 6 lessons. Chevy Chase taught me cruelty can wear a smile. Paul Lynde taught me genius without kindness is wasted brilliance. Jerry Lewis taught me ego devours everything, even legacy. Gene Hackman taught me suffering doesn't make you deep, just lonely. Mickey Rooney taught me age reveals character, never creates it. And Lee Marvin taught me some men break things they don't know how to build. 100 years old. I've outlived most of them. I've outsmiled all of them. And I've learned this. Kindness is harder than cruelty. Patience is harder than rage. Forgiveness is harder than resentment. But here's the secret they never figured out. Hard doesn't mean weak. It means strong. Strong enough to walk away. Strong enough to choose joy when the world offers bitterness. Strong enough to love someone broken and not let their cracks become yours. My grandchildren sometimes ask me, "Grandpa, how did you stay so happy?" And I tell them, I met the worst people in Hollywood, and I decided not to become them. That's the secret. Not avoiding darkness, but refusing to let it make you dark. These 6 men didn't defeat me. They defined me. They showed me exactly who I refused to become. Because in the end, The measure of a man isn't who he can't forgive. It's who he becomes, despite them. And I became someone who still believes. Laughter should heal. Love should rebuild. And even when the world is cruel, you can choose to be kind. That's my legacy. Not the Emmys, not the movies, not the fame. Just this. I met the worst of Hollywood, and I refused to let them make me worse. Now let me ask you something. Who in your life tested your grace? Who made you want to give up on kindness? And more importantly, did you let them win? Leave a comment below. Tell me about the person who tried to break you and how you stayed standing. Share this with someone who's fighting to stay kind in a cruel world, someone who needs to hear that nice guys don't finish last. We finish standing. See you in the next story.